Hello, everyone. Today we are looking at research proposal, which is basically the foundation of every research. It's a point where you share now your ideas about what you want to do. Is it with your institution or maybe your funders, even your readers or other, maybe even your clients? So it's a document which is very important and especially when you are trying to solicit some funds or trying to get sponsors or even convince your possible helpers in your research. So sit back, relax. My name is Malcolm Shambana. Yes, you can catch me on 0977 That's a local line, or you can call me on, you can check my YouTube channel and subscribe to it, and you can have all those details. So today we are into research proposals. So sit back, relax, and enjoy whatever you're doing as I present. Thank you. So our learning objective today is only actually one learning objective, and we are looking at the contents of a research proposal. Basically, it begins with an abstract. Your research proposal begins with an abstract, but usually we prepare the abstract after the whole document is done, be it for your thesis or your full thesis or your research proposal. You prepare the abstract after the thesis is done, but it's found in front of your document. So I'll come back to the abstract. Let me walk you through the other contents before we come back to the abstract. So your proposal begins with your introduction, of course, where it's a first, of course, chapter where which you is going to interact with your readers. So it has to be very clear. It has to be concise, not too long, not too short. It has to be convincing, especially at proposal stage. Your introduction has to speak to the readers or the funders. They have to have an interest in whatever you are proposing to do. So the background of your research, of course, it outlines the subject from a broader perspective, from a general perspective to a narrow perspective. For example, if you are discussing the impact of drought on the Zambian economy, you're going to begin by discussing smaller items like what is drought, how Zambia has been experiencing drought, the current drought situation. You give a background information, whatever you know, whatever you need to know, whatever you can research on, whatever material you find, you throw it in your background. Then, of course, you have to also give a problem statement. What problem is there? What problem are you trying to investigate and find a solution? So you need to state that, and this will make the readers or the funders of the project be more interested, especially if it's a problem-solving research. Usually at academic level, we deal with issues to do with problem. You trying to help find a solution to an existing problem, or are you trying to add the knowledge to the what literature which is already existing. For example, Zambia is currently facing a problem of drought. You state everything. You state that problem. You tell them what it has affected. Tell them how currently the situation is about that problem. You also move now to your aims and objectives, of course, and also your questions. And this has to be aligned. A research aim is a statement indicating the general purpose of your research. Tell them what generally you are trying to do. And of course, it's related to your research topic. Further, you can break down your research into smaller particles, which we are going to call objectives. The research objective are specific targets that must be achieved or accomplished to meet the research aim. So they have to be aligned, they have to be related to the research aim. Questions have to be related to the research objectives. Your main research question has to be related to your research aim. Your sub research questions have to be related to your objectives. That's how it's done. It has to be aligned. The scope, of course, you need to set boundaries of your research. If there are any limitation, where are you going to do this? For example, where are you doing your research? Geographical location, or what time are you covering? Of course, every research has a boundary because you can't study the whole world or whatever material is there. And most importantly, the significance of research here, you have to write it very carefully, especially when you're doing your research proposal. It has to show the importance of that research to the readers or the funders. It has to be specific. And it has to state who are the beneficiaries. This also explains how the research is going to contribute to existing literature. It explains the gap in literature and that will be covered by the research. Very important part of your research proposal. Operation definition. You need now to define the terms you'll be using in your research so that the readers and funders are on the same page with you. They understand what you're talking about. You have to put in definitions there. For example, in our case, sorry, in our case, there may be terms like drought. You need to define drought. Like I've given the example, you need to define energy sector. You need to define what agriculture is. You put in those such definition for your operation. We will move on to shortly to chapter 2, where we are going to discuss the literature review. Thank you. So chapter 2 of your research proposal covers your literature review. So literature review discusses the work which has been done by others. Of course, the work which relates to your topic. The importance of literature review is to avoid duplication, increase knowledge on the subject, of course, and also aids contextualization of findings, also aids in establishing knowledge gaps. This is very important, especially in your research proposal. You need to discuss in details what knowledge is missing and how your proposal is going to fetch that knowledge. You need to discuss that in details. Establishing the knowledge gap is very important. That's the main point actually for your literature review at the proposal stage. Also aids in establishing the research methodology. You're going to assess what other methods were used in the past and also assess if there is any better methods which you can use to establish and contribute to the body of knowledge. That's the importance of the literature review. The third chapter is your research methodology. This is where now you discuss procedures, techniques which you are going to use in your research. I've adopted the, this, that definition from the University of Witwatersrand in 2023. So methodology actually explains what data will be collected, where the data will be collected, how the data will be collected, and how the data will be analyzed. So even in your research proposal, you need to clearly define how you're going to handle this data, how you're going to collect it, how you're going to, where it will be collected from, how it will be collected, what will be collected, and how it will be analyzed. So within the research methodology, you need to discuss the research philosophies. There's a video on specifically for this. You need to check the YouTube channel. You can find it another video which I discussed specifically the issues to do with research philosophies. I won't go into details regarding that. We are only looking at the contents of the research proposal. But please take your time, go and watch that video so that you are up to speed. This includes also your research approaches. Then, chapter 4, this is where the difference comes in from your main research project, your main thesis, your final document from the difference from the proposal document. Your chapter 4 of your final document will have data collection and data analysis, maybe, depending on the outline. Institutions differ from one institution to another depending on the outline which is required by a particular institution. But usually in chapter 4, we have data collection and data analysis. But in our research proposal, you are going to have research planning and compliance requirement. This is not a standard, by the way. This is just a general outline of your research proposal. So under compliance and research planning, of course, you are going to have your project work plan. You can use a Gantt chart that can discuss the timeline of each activity, what you are going to, how long it will take for you to finish your introduction, how long you are going to do your literature review, how long you are going to do your data analysis, and so on and so forth. A Gantt chart should be in line with the time requirement for your institution, of course, and your academic supervisor, or I don't know what you call them, or your advisor. It has to be in line with you. You have to agree with your institution or your supervisor. Then we also have the project budget. You have now to discuss how much the project will cost and what resources, where are the sources of that funding of the project. If it's self-funded, you may have to mention that. If it's funded by a particular institution, you state that. And you have to be specific about the cost. You have to state that in your proposal. There is also where you need to also discuss how you're going to manage the data, how you're going to store your data. Still on planning, chapter 4. You need also to discuss the ethical consideration, how ethical issues will be managed. For example, obtaining consent from respondents. You have to discuss how you're going to do that. You also need to discuss health and safety, especially if your project is physical or so scientific and maybe may involve human subjects. You have to discuss how safety is going to be handled, health safety is going to be handled during the project, during your research. You also need to discuss the constraints, what challenges you are likely to face, which are going to affect the completion of your project or the performance of the project. Some common constraints could be financial resources or your location or the problem with respondents not responding on time or not giving the right material. You need to discuss all the constraints of your project. So every document concludes with reference. Of course, you would put your literature review. You need to discuss work done by others. You need to acknowledge their work through the reference. And within your text, within your literature review chapter, you need also to put in texting, in citing, to acknowledge the particular works of others. So besides the reference, under your appendix, you can put how you intend to, what content are going to be within your thesis or dissertation. You can put the outline there. Are you going to have chapter 1 with introduction, chapter 2 with literature review, chapter 3 with methodology, chapter 4 data analysis, chapter 5 is it your findings, chapter 6 is it your recommendation? You can combine or split. You have to discuss that. So I'll take you back to the abstract, which is a summary of everything you have discussed in your project. So the abstract itself discusses almost each chapter, but it's very concise. It will discuss the abstract will discuss your background in a summarized form, one or two sentences or three. It will discuss your research question, it will discuss previous research, it will discuss research rationale, which is, of course, the significance of your research, to discuss your methods, possible limitation, and significance. Rationale and I think I need to combine that. Rationale and significance, please ignore the first three. These are one and the same thing. So you need to now put an abstract after you are done with your proposal. Just remember that your proposal has to be convincing and has to reach out to readers or funders. Thank you.